Your ability to manage your nervous system may be the most powerful tool that you have at your disposal to really change your energy, to change your health, to change your longevity. For many years, medicine has kind of broken the body down into individual components, right? We have brain specialists, we have digestive specialists, we have cardiometabolic specialists, etc. But the body really doesn't work like that. All of the systems of the body are very much integrated and very much work together. And this is why the nervous system is such a powerful tool when it comes to impacting our whole body's health. This link is called the gut-brain connection, and it's a very intricate, very cool circular loop between our brain and our gut and back to our brain. And what's cool about the circular loop is that while disruption can occur at any point in the cycle, so for example, you can have, say, a brain injury or a mental health issue or something like, or a stressful incident go on with your brain, and that impacts your gut and disrupts the cycle, or maybe you have digestive issues or a gut infection or something like that can create an imbalance to the system. Because it is circular, we can also come at it and treat it and improve symptoms, improve balance at many points in the cycle as well. And often when we come from multiple angles, we get a whole lot better benefit and a whole lot better outcome. So I want to just take a little bit of a journey through this loop with you today. We're going to start in the brain and kind of go around and just see what collateral damage can occur when the system gets out of balance, and then we'll talk about what we can do to bring it back into balance. And I want to do this through the lens of stress, and I want to use stress here not because sometimes stress can kind of turn people off. They're like, can't deal with that. But also stress is not something that we are or aren't. It's just a feeling and a sensation or a body response that we all go into and out of at multiple times of every day, because it's our nervous system adapting to the exposures that we have. So when we look at this through the lens of stress, what happens is, so our brain communicates with our body through the release of hormones and neurotransmitters. And when we have something stressful happen, our body releases a cascade of hormones, stress hormones, which impact our gut. So following this gut-brain connection around, when we have a stressful incident, two kind of pathways are instigated. There's a fast-acting stress response and a slower-acting stress response. The fast-acting stress response, it releases things like adrenaline and norepinephrine and epinephrine and whatnot. Now, these particular hormones have been shown to have quite an impact on the diversity of our gut bacteria, quite an interesting impact actually. What was seen to happen is that the good bacteria in our digestive system tend to decrease on exposure to adrenaline and norepinephrine and whatnot, and the not so good guys, which are there but not a problem in balance, tend to grow and increase and proliferate. So we really get this disruption to the balance of our gut microbiome. And when this occurs, all different bacteria in our body release different chemicals and metabolic byproducts. And if we have an overgrowth of guys that are perhaps not so good, in a small amount they're not a problem, but when there's too many of them producing these byproducts, these chemical messengers that get into our bloodstream, they travel to our brain, they can really disrupt brain signaling. So in that first kind of fast-acting stress response, it might be something like someone pulling out in front of you in their car or something that gives you a little bit of a shock. We can see, there can be this disruption to our gut bacterial profile. Now, there's also a slow-acting stress response as well, and this is more driven by the hormone cortisol. Now, the impact that cortisol has on our gut health and our digestive system is slightly more connected to physical function and chemical function. So physically, what cortisol does is it increases the leakiness or the gaps between the cells that line our digestive system. So our digestive lining is just one cell thick. It's separating the inside contents of our digestive system from our bloodstream and basically the internal environment of our body. And if the cell lining opens up here and the gaps between the cells are bigger, what can happen is that partially digested food particles, bacterial cells, chemical messengers, whatnot, can get into our bloodstream. And when they're in our bloodstream, they come into contact with our immune cells, and our immune cells are floating around in our bloodstream, keeping us safe. And they kind of sense these things and like, what are these guys doing here? They're not supposed to be here. And so an immune response is activated. So a whole lot of immune activation and inflammatory markers is increased. And these inflammatory markers in the bloodstream also circulate back to the brain, signaling the brain that something's not quite right. Now, inside all of the cells that line our digestive system, there's also a lot of nerves. In fact, they reckon that there may be, more nerve endings in our digestive system than there is actually in our whole spinal cord. And so what happens is this kind kind of disruption to our microbiomes occurring, as this disruption to our cell lining is occurring, chemical messengers and inflammatory markers are increasing, our nerves get this stimulation, our nerves get this reactivity going on, and so we get this increased sensation of pain or discomfort in our digestive system. And anyone who's really struggled with a long-term digestive issue will know this feeling, this kind of just increased perception of discomfort in the abdomen. And this is just because of that nerve activation as a result of this cascade of events which is going on. So we have kind of all this mess, right? We have a microbial change, we have a digestive system lining change, we have an increased inflammatory markers from an immune response, and all of these messengers are getting sent back to the brain, and the brain's job is to keep us safe. And so the brain reads these messages and thinks, something's not right down there. There's an invisible enemy which we need to deal with, and so it upregulates immune response further and upregulates our nervous system further, and it creates this very circular problematic cycle to what is going on in our immune system and in our gut-brain connection. And you could think, well, mate, how do any of us survive, right? This seems like such a ridiculously complicated system. But what's really interesting is in a short time frame, so short, sharp stresses, this system actually is really adaptive and really it builds our resilience to stress. It teaches our body what to react to, what not to react to, how to come back into balance again. So it's actually a very adaptive and a positive thing in the short term. It's kind of like when you're learning to drive, right, and you lose traction for a bit or something, you have a near miss, and it gives you a little bit more of an understanding of how careful you need to be and how quickly things can go wrong, and it actually improves your driving ability in the long term. And it's exactly the same, a short, sharp stressor actually has a positive impact on our ability to adapt and our ability to be resilient in the long term. But the trouble really comes in when we're looking at this over a long-term period of time with really chronic stress, where we aren't able to kind of come back into that sense of calm, come back into that place of balance again, and recover from the stress. And it's like our body gets jammed in this stress response. And then we have a whole lot of negative effects that start to show up as a result of this kind of upregulated immune response, upregulated nervous response, disrupted gut bacteria, etc. We start to see just systemic inflammation through the body increasing, so more like joint pain, skin inflammation, digestive disorders and whatnot tend to increase over time as a result of this initial stimulation. Because blood sugar is rising and stress is turned up, we have this increase in type 2 diabetes and increase in blood pressure, cholesterol, cardiometabolic risk, and all that sort of stuff. And then there's also disruption to brain signaling as a result, because the brain's very busy kind of managing this invisible fight all the time. And so there's a disruption to the brain circuitry, which really can lead to some of the mental health disorders which arise, anxiety, depression, and inability to regulate our mood so well. And another thing is, and I've seen this quite a lot because I look at a lot of clients' blood work, the on-flow effect of chronic stress really leads to this massive level of nutrient depletion, because that constantly upregulated immune response, that constantly upregulated nervous response is very nutrient demanding. And so our body's just getting sucked of all these nutrients all the time, which means we don't kind of have the building blocks there to repair and recover quite the same anymore. And because of the stress, we may not be eating so well, our digestive system's not working so well, and so we're maybe not supplying enough of the nutrients either. And so it can really snowball and go sideways over maybe weeks, months, and years. And it all comes back to this kind of gut-brain connection and the disruption that occurs there. And so I want to just kind of bring this back to my two opening statements, which was, because it's a circular system, we can come at it from many angles and really start to bring some balance again with just things that we can bring in day to day. And if we come at it from multiple angles, we often see really good results and really nice improvement quite quickly. But the other one is that your ability to manage your nervous system state may be the best and most powerful tool that you have to actually manage your health, your energy, and your longevity in the long term. And that's because of the power of this gut-brain system. See, the brain gets really, really good at doing what it does all the time. And so when we live in this kind of reactive, overreactive state all the time, a really heightened sense of stress response, our brain's quite comfortable there. It just keeps doing its thing, and it's we may not even recognize it as stress anymore. It's just happening, and it's the state that we're used to living in. But our digestive system is constantly being bombarded with these micro doses of stress hormones, which are having a physiological impact on how it functions and creating a flow-on effect back to the brain that's just really racking the system up. And so little things can really add up to big things quite quickly, and that can be a negative, but it can also be a real positive, because we can see that small changes can really start to bring some big results and big balance back into this. So if we look at it through the brain piece, what are the tools we have there to bring some balance? Well, breath work's a really good example. Breathing is one of the fastest, most powerful ways that we have to actually bring our body back into a state of parasympathetic nervous system mode. So it is, stimulating that vagus nerve and really bringing ourselves back into a place of calm by managing our breath. Things like meditation, things like stillness, things like getting outside for a walk, getting your feet in the dirt, getting some sunshine on your face, some fresh air in your lungs, doing stuff that brings joy and fulfillment, social connection, those sorts of things. The things that allow us to come back into parasympathetic nervous mode and give our digestive system a break. And when the vagus nerve is stimulated, we come back into calm, we really have the tools there to kind of counteract the impact of those stress hormones on our digestive system. And if we look at it from the gut angle, it's really interesting. There's some interesting studies on the use of probiotics to manage mental health and depression and anxiety and whatnot, and there's some real positive responses to probiotics, which it seems like, well, they're so disconnected, but when you understand the gut-brain connection, you realize actually it's not, because it's bringing some stability back to the digestive system, which calms that whole reactive response within the immune system and the nervous system and whatnot, and the messages that are going back to the brain. So things like probiotics, things like fermented foods, things like vegetable diversity, eating a whole range of different vegetables, adequate protein, keeping, avoiding things like the alcohol and sugar and antibiotics and stuff as much as possible, the things that really disrupt the gut bacteria. But it's really about looking at building a resilient digestive system so that not only can it withstand the stress response when it happens, because it has to happen, it's a part of life and it's actually a good thing, an adaptive thing when it's in balance, but when it does have to deal with it, it can come back into balance more quickly because there's resilience there. There's those protective mechanisms of a diverse gut bacteria and a good strong gut lining. We've actually, with our clients in the program, we really look at this from all angles. We look at the lifestyle component, the nutrition component, the mindset component, because you could say, well, I'm going to bring in a probiotic because that sounds like a good thing to do. But if you're not addressing those other components, because the body is a system that works, a whole lot of systems working together, then you may get some benefit, but you're not going to, experience or kind of fully realize the extent of improvement that you might have in your chronic health conditions without addressing all of it. So we really look at this from many angles with our clients in the program. We actually did a full training on this, looking at that gut mood connection and just sort of some of the foods you can bring in there, some of what's going on there. I'd really like to share this with you. If you're watching this on YouTube, the link will be down below. But if you're watching this on Facebook, you can just comment gut mood below and we can send that out to you, and hopefully it'll be useful just to kind of build that understanding of this link and connection there, and just how powerful it is to be doing, things like being prescriptive about making sure you've got a walk in your day, or getting some time to take some time out and wind down at the end of the day, or making sure you've got some vegetables in your lunch. Those things seem so little, but they actually add up to a really powerful effect in our body and in our health in general. So hopefully this has been useful for you guys. I'll let you get on with your day and see you later. Bye.